format to be delivered, and also rules for reuse. So you might publish a model at a certain point. It may be suitable for costing, it may be suitable for coordination, for clash, any number of different reasons. So those rules can be built in. So really, that is collaboration. It's not difficult stuff. And there's a British standard that came out a couple of years ago. And I sat on the industry panel that actually put this together before the British standards people got hold of it. And we just looked at best practice. So we said we know some projects work really well in sharing information, working in a federated way, and let's capture some of that. So we looked at over 70 projects in Europe, and we just wrote down what worked and what didn't, and we developed some best practice from that. So I'd certainly encourage you to look at that document, and there's some guidance notes with it. Where it has been used, again, this is an important one for me, 10% construction cost savings. Now, the standard doesn't give you, it's not a CAD standard, it doesn't give you a prescriptive way of working, but it sets up a framework. So it says when you name your files, for example, this is the standard that you should use to ensure it's done consistently across the project. This is how you set up your collaboration framework on your IT systems to ensure when you're publishing something for someone to share, this is how you set up your workflows. And it gives a lot of flexibility how you actually do the technical detail, but it just gives you a framework to say consistently, this is what we have to do. And again, the big ones for me, again, things like supply chain profitability. Everybody gains, designers, suppliers, because it helps to take out waste and risk. And the beauty of adopting a standard is that it is just that, it's a standard. It's a best practice standard that's being used on some major projects around the world, and you can just take it off the shelf and apply it to a project. So it's like any standard. The more people that begin to use it, the better it becomes for the industry. Okay, so what do we need to do to go on this road to BIM? The first thing to say is it is okay to fail sometimes. Not all this stuff works when you try it on every project. And if you look at what we traditionally do in construction, whether it's a new CAD system, a new tool, whatever it might be, we think about it, we plan it, we try it, and then we'll try it for a long while to make sure it's okay. Then we try something else. And it's sort of slow and steady. But really with things like BIM and working smarter, any sort of new technology, if you can just try a few things, try something small, try a pilot project. Don't go, for example, with the Trimble setting out system. Don't think, right, I've never used it before, but I'm going to suddenly set out this massive campus, this city-scale development, and try and do it in a week. You start with a building or a floor. You try it with a few people that have been trained in it. So it's a step process, but recognizing that sometimes this stuff won't work. You'll get some knockbacks. But providing your whole business isn't dependent on that process, you make much faster progress. The other thing to say is that it's okay to be average. Because again, part of the hype is that we sit in sessions like this, and there's the vision of BIM, the 5-year vision where it's all connected and integrated and it's all fantastic. But the developers I work with, again, have a number of suppliers, designers, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, who are all doing different degrees of BIM. So we've got 0 to 80% on the left-hand side. Again, however you measure that, it's just an indication to say, yeah, we're doing a bit of BIM, or yeah, we're doing loads of BIM. All our stuff is in 3D with data. So as a client, you have a supply chain like this. So what the smarter clients are doing is saying to their suppliers, look, just aim for average. And by doing that, of course, everybody wins. It lifts up everybody. That then means that a few people that were above average before are now slipped below. But it's constantly moving. So developers and clients are beginning to understand, look, it's not about going from doing some fairly okay 2D to doing full BIM. It's got to be that process. Okay, so again, a few pointers as to how to do this, touching on some of the points that Paul was making earlier. The road to BIM. I call it the road less travelled, to borrow a phrase, because whenever I show this to people, everyone sits there and nods and says, yeah, that's exactly what we do, that's how we do it. And yet when I go back and talk to them, very few people actually do this. But it's not difficult stuff. So firstly, develop your BIM strategy. Which again sounds fairly obvious, but you all need to understand or ask yourselves, why are we doing this? Now, what is it for you? Are you a main contractor, a second-tier contractor, third? Are you a designer, a supplier? You've all got different reasons for doing BIM in your companies. And it's important to understand what that is and develop your strategy around that. Don't just go headlong into BIM and buying stuff because you think we should be doing it. Always bring it back to why are we doing it? What's the business case? Once you've got that business case, you can get the finance for it. And again, the key thing is to start developing some KPIs, because the board will start asking, okay, yeah, we might invest $100,000 in product X or system Y, but what's the payback? When will I get my payback? What's the return on investment? So doing BIM is no different from any other business investment. Then come the pilot projects. And again, it's really important to start small and to build up. This is still fairly new stuff in terms of doing it well. So you need to have a few people that are well trained. You need to understand exactly why you're doing it. You need the right project in the right format. And you also need to develop things like documentation. Again, Paul was saying from a construction perspective, you need a methodology. What works for you? What's your way of doing BIM? Now, your methodology may be different from somebody else's. A bit like having a CAD standard. There are lots of CAD standards. It's important that it has one that works for you. Prepare the deployment strategy. Again, before you start going headlong into putting all this stuff on site or in the office and using it, actually think about how you're going to deploy it. Who's going to start using it? What projects? Making sure your IT system is configured correctly. Okay, so all those things, again, like any IT deployment, any process change, think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. Education, training and support can't really be overemphasized. Now, as an industry, we focus very much on the training side of it. So, we get, as Bentley, we get people come through our training courses 2 days, 3 days, 4 days on a particular package. But sometimes you find somebody comes along and you say, why are you doing this particular course? And they'll say, oh, because I was told to come along at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning and do whatever the course is. Very rarely do people actually educate their supply chains or their individuals about why they're doing something. Because again, everybody will sit there and say, well, why should I do BIM? What's in it for me as a CAD operator, as a design manager, as a BIM manager? Why should I do it? And then the training, but then the support. So that ongoing mentoring and support on a project. So don't just cut people adrift. You've told them why they're doing it. You've told them what sort of behaviour they need to exhibit once they've done the training. But you then need to hold their hand in those first few projects to help them get along. And in fact, just thinking about BIM managers and picking up on a point that Paul made, very often a project won't need a BIM manager. Much of what we do in BIM is about existing processes and doing them a bit smarter, a bit quicker with some different applications. But really, things like design review, clash detection, they're all things that we do as an industry already. It's done by a design manager, a project manager, CAD people, individuals. So we don't have to go out and suddenly appoint a BIM manager or go and recruit somebody or promote somebody. This stuff is really done by existing people on existing companies. Just finishing off now really with 3 implementation principles. So when you're doing BIM, the first one that particularly senior people at C-level and GMs, they'll go through a process of understanding and being educated, but they always bring it back to, well, what about the technology? Because for them that has a cost. They're used to signing off on new machines, new software, training and so on. But it works. It works on the laptops that people are carrying around today. There are versions that work on iPads and smartphones, and it's a common thing. It works on the equipment that we have. The second most important aspect is processes. So the processes and standards to make it work. Your project deployment strategy, your BIM strategy, however that looks. And there are different levels. There are global best practice standards. I mentioned the British standard. There are American standards for creating content, for modelling. You'll have your own company standards. So the Lend-Lease way of doing it, or the Triple M way of doing it, was your project delivery guide. And then there are particular project standards. You'll collectively agree at the start of a project, right, this is the project standard, the project way of doing something. The most important part, again, is the people. Because that's what it comes down to ultimately. It's the individuals in your firms, your projects, that are having to do this stuff and make it work. And everybody sits there and says, well, what's in it for me? I'm a CAD guy, I'm a modeler. Why should I do this? The GMs are also asking, why should we do it? Why should we invest thousands of dollars in this, whatever this is? What's the benefit for us? And then there's the how do I do it? And I put this in just to try and emphasise the fact it's called a picnic. BIM is a picnic. And it stands for, I actually came across it when I phoned up our internal IT help desk once. I heard them say in the background, another picnic. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And they actually said it stands for problem in chair, not in computer. So basically it's user error. And that's what BIM comes down to every time. It's not about the technology. There's whole different bunches of technology you can wrap around this stuff to make it work. But it comes down to the people every time. So the road to big BIM. I'm not going to stand here and say it's easy. It is difficult to do. You've got to think about it. You have to plan it. It takes time and effort to make this stuff successful. It's not a case of just buying the software. But there is a big benefit. If you're actually the ones that decide how you want to do it for your businesses, what you want to get out of it as individuals, it puts you in a very strong position. It puts you in a position of control. And it's important to create a solution for BIM and collaboration that suits you and the projects that you're working on. There's not one size fits all. It's not a case of just buying something and deploying it and that's it. Look at what the project needs, look at what the companies need and the individuals in those companies to get benefit from it. And develop your own individual road to BIM and avoid doing too much with too little too soon. Thank you.